It's always about trying to make advancement in the waves or the smooth times and then prepare for those really rough times because we know the next wave is coming. So I read this book so you don't have to. Now, this book right here, Only the Paranoid Survive, is by Andrew Grove. It is a really cool book, and I'm reading it actually because of Patrick Bet-David, who is an awesome YouTuber that is out there. This book was one of the favorites of Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, and Steve Jobs of Apple. This is a story about the guys who run Intel. Now, this is through the 80s and 90s, but so many of the points that are in there are applicable to your business and to your life today. I love the points that are in here, but if you look at this, how to exploit the crisis points that challenge every company and career. So this doesn't matter if it's a company or a career. And how often is there crisis points? We know between me and you, there's always another crisis right on the horizon. So his main point of the whole thing is how can we figure out what those main drivers are that can really hurt you and how we could survive through it, but not just survive, but to thrive. So I'm going to give you my 2 cents on it and the points that I learned from it. Number one is the need to make advancement between the waves. If you think of the waves that come into the beach, we'll see that one wave hits you and knocks you back farther towards, but think of those guys on the surfboards between the waves where the water is calm. They're swimming like crazy to get ahead and make some advancement in knowing that the next wave is going to come and knock them under. So their whole goal is make advancement between the waves and then try to dive under the trouble of the waves. We got to do that in our life, whether it is your husband, wife, with your kids, or with your businesses. It's always about trying to make advancement in the waves or the smooth times and then prepare for those really rough times because we know the next wave is coming. Number two is the need to expose ourselves to constant change. Now, this is a recurring thing that is in this book, and that's why I want you to look at that because Only the Paranoid Survive does not talk about one event. Let's think of it like hurricanes or something like that. Yes, we have to know how to get through a hurricane. Say you live in Florida and you know a hurricane's coming and you have to prepare for it. But what about the next hurricane and the next one? We know that every year we're going to go into hurricane season. It's going to be really, really rough on us. So we got to know how to live through it, but also how to plan for the next one immediately. When do you plan for the next hurricane? Well, the day after one rolls through. So we have to know how to always be exposing ourselves to that constant change. Now, I got to tell you, when I was going through school, once I get through grade 12, 11, wherever you are, you're like, I am never doing school again, ever. That's what I thought. But what I didn't realize is now that I've been out of school for 20 years, I've been in school essentially for 20 years because nonstop reading. And if you do something like this and try to pick up a new book every week and continually learn, and learning now is a lifetime goal, then we can really move forward in this life. All right, my third point, invite opinions of those who critique us. Now, this is very uncomfortable for the majority of people because you always want to talk to people who are like you and talk about the game or talk about similar businesses. But remember, we go through this several times, is we have to invite those opinions of those who are critiquing us so that we can be better. Meaning us as a person, me as a father, as a husband, or if we're going to talk about our business, how can we create a better business? What if everybody said, I wish, David, you would just write this down in a book. And so when you do, you can do that if everyone is telling you that. All right, point number 4. How do we deal with a strategic inflection point will determine your future. Now, in this book by Andrew Grove, he keeps talking about strategic inflection points. So that's just a fork in the road where something has been forced upon you. Let's say it's in the past 2 years, the big lockdowns that happen. We have to choose either the business will continue the way it was and peril, or we're going to completely pivot and reinvent the company and survive. So there's a cross in the road that is coming to you. You didn't choose it, right? It might be a big recession. It could be anything, but you now have to work through that. And how you work through that trouble is what will determine your future. Again, same as with your family, same as if we're talking about a business, exactly the same. Now, he keeps talking about that fork in the road and the valley of death. He says it's a perilous transition that you have to go through, and you have to know that the majority of people aren't going to make it in your business. Meaning that if you had, let's say, 50 dry cleaners, maybe not all of them are going to make it through because maybe not everyone was as inventive. Same thing if we're talking about a company. If you have 10 different employees and you are changing the direction of the company, maybe some of them are not going to believe in the same things you believe in, and they're not going to be a good fit in the new face of the company. So you have to be ready to deal with that and understand that maybe not everyone's going to be the perfect fit moving forward. All right, next point that I found was that we have a protective bubble around us. And that protective bubble that is around us is always keeping us comfortable, right? But being comfortable can also be the thing that sucks you under and hurts you a lot, because change can be healthy. Now, the world is constantly changing. And so if you refuse to change, just like, let's say, Kodak camera coming out with those instant Polaroids, the world changed around them and they didn't change fast enough. So they end up going under. Now, I did find something very, very funny in the book. Have you guys seen Grant Cardone? Grant Cardone is the president of the 10X change. I found it very interesting. This book is talking about the 70s and 80s, and he mentions right here in this book a 10X change. I'm telling you, if you read through this book, it comes up like 500 times in there. Will it be a 10X improvement in your company? A 10X improvement in clients? Everywhere you look is 10X, 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 10X. So it's kind of funny. Now, Grant Cardone may have got the idea from here. I'd like to know. Grant, if you ever watch this, let me know. But it's incredibly accurate. You know, Grant Cardone always says you want to aim for 10 times the amount of clients and be happy if you get 5 times the amount of clients, but aim higher, right? One of the big points that Andrew is bringing out here as well is that you have to differentiate yourself from the rest of the people that are out there. He says niche down, I guess is what you would hear nowadays, but be different than everyone that is out there, but it has to give your client an advantage. I remember seeing one realtor who always wears an orange tie. He goes, well, that's what makes me different. But that may not be the one that gets your client an advantage. Everyone is going to call you and go, what's up with the orange tie? I remember. But does it give your client advantage? What we try to do at my brokerage is we're always trying to help people sell their home for more money, get more exposure, hit more millions of people when we run ads on the home. How does it give them an advantage to make them more money or save them time or save them friction in the way that they're doing some business? So get them an advantage, which leads him to number 2, is that you have to act while others don't. That is very, very similar to the wave thing that we were talking about before, because when there's a wave, big recession happens, everyone's looking for help. Everyone's panicking, right? But when it gets smooth, that's when everyone seems to sit back, they relax on the beach, you know, let's take it easy. Everything's good right now. But that is going to be the differentiating part, is because during that calm time, let's say it was 2012 all the way to 2019, were you relentlessly improving and preparing? Because according to him, right, only the paranoid people who are being careful, having reserve funds, always improving, those are the ones that are going to improve. So remember, act while others are not. So if you're in school and then you're in school, are you doing something after school to improve yourself? Maybe it's reading, maybe it's getting a second job. If you have a job 9 to 5, well, what are you doing in your evening hours? Are you improving yourself on the weekend in order to get maybe a better career? So doing things while others are not. Number 3 rule that he had was to price for volume and then work to lower your cost. So a lot of people get in this trap very early and they make some kind of widget or some program and they're like, I want $5,000 for this program. Honestly, the courses that we make, I think they're worth more than $5,000. But the point is you make things for a reasonable cost, and then the problem you're trying to solve is how do you get the price down? Instead of creating an expensive product, never selling it, and then the problem you're trying to solve is how do I get more people to spend more money on it? Try to get it for a very low price, and then your job now is to figure out how to lower the prices of those items. That is a very, very important thing that I apply in my business as well, is price for volume and then work on lowering the cost. I think those 3 rules are really, really important. He talks a lot about management as well, and the management behaviors when we're looking at different businesses and how we're going to deal with our clients. One thing he says right away is, if you had a silver bullet, which competitor would you shoot? And usually that answer is going to come pretty quick. Oh, I hate that guy, that does whatever. But why? Is it because he's very successful? Well, why is that? Does he have a better product? Does he have a better marketing campaign? So if you know what your number one competitor is, then you can actually learn from them and try to copy some of their amazing things that they're doing in their job. I think that's really good. He also asks, what happens if you were like, say, a CEO? What happens if you went and hired a new CEO? If you hired a new CEO, what is the first thing that he would do? I know that he would go, this is what you have to do. And that exercise gets rid of all the bias in your mind. Well, we've been making Polaroid cameras for 100 years. Yeah, but we got to change. No one's buying them anymore. So getting rid of your bias and looking at it from an outside perspective can really, really, really help. Now, you need to be spending time on the ground if you have a big company. Now, obviously, he was the runner of Intel. Okay, so we're talking about R&D departments, thousands of people. Okay, but when we're talking about thousands of people, you're also now the same as if you're a lowly realtor like me, right? Of course, I'm reading statistics, looking at graphs, looking at the offices of the superintendent of financial institutions, or we're looking at the Fed rates or whatever, but nothing replaces the fact that you're talking to clients, seeing how close they are to not making their payments, or looking whether they're going to buy a home or why not. Boots on the ground, they always call it. So even if you're higher up in a company, you want to be talking to everybody to get their opinions as much as you can. If you can't, at least talk to middle management. Maybe they're going to know. That's what Andrew always talks about. You have to know that. And he also mentions, you want to listen to other people. You want to be the stupidest person in the room. You want to ask questions. Keep asking questions, because that's how we're going to learn. One thing that I always find interesting is, and this is just from my life, is I only grow from talking to somebody who has a different opinion from me. I think that's important for you to think about for a second. We naturally don't want trouble. I mean, there are some people, we all know those people want to fight about everything, but the majority of people, they just want to talk with someone who's similar to them, and they want to just get things along. It's uncomfortable to have that conflict when you're dealing with somebody who has a completely opposite point of view. But here's the fun part behind that. If you're only talking to people who have the opposite point of view, it gives you enormous potential for growth, which I think is really, really cool, because you're challenging your own ideas. Here is the only two things that can happen. Either you're going to hear what their opinion is, and then it re-solidifies your opinion on what you should be doing. That's cool. Or B, you're going to learn something from them, which I think is even cooler, right? And I think it's a win-win situation for yourself. Either you're going to be stronger in your convictions, or you're going to learn something. So I think that's really good. He mentioned, again, to talk through the point with you. So whenever you're going to talk about a point, that you objectively want to be talking about the objections at the same time. So if I'm going to present something, I'm kind of playing the devil's advocate and exploring both sides. And he says this is a framework that we have to use to win any conflict. Now, conflict could be good or bad, right? We can be moving toward a positive light or a negative light, but when we are discussing things, we want to bring that devil's advocate kind of thing up always. And this process of debating all the time, it can be scary, right? But different people have different views. And by doing that, we're just increasing how good we are, how rounded we are. Here's a fun thing that I never learned. I went to the Canada National Mint. I also went to the Perth Mint in Australia, and I found it very, very cool in there. They dump all these rocks in here and then heat, like I'm talking crazy amount of heat, right? Like it's boiling everything, and all this gold floated up to the top. And how did they purify that gold more and more, right? More heat, remove the melted rock on the top. More heat, remove the rock, right? Heat, heat, heat. So think about that from your life. The more heat that we're under, the more pressure, the more under a crucible, right? Pressure creates a diamond. The heat creates even more pure gold. By us going through those, let's say, conflicts or those discussions, those arguments, we're getting better and better and better. And so how could you lose at that, right? Here's a fun thing that he mentions, right? This goes over decades. And think of how fast technology is changing over decades. And they're having to make moves left, right, and center all the time. Oh, the Japanese are making better chips, or another company was making better chips. And here it is. A company could take years or decades in this case to build. Decades, but it only takes a day to burn it down. This is the exact same thing as your reputation. It could take you years to develop a good reputation and one day to burn your reputation to the ground. So that is why you always want to be trying to do the right thing in your company, the right thing in your family, the right thing with your friends, because you could lose that reputation really, really quickly. Now, he's talking in this book about Intel, right? So he's talking about all these other companies that are out there that are making chips. And a big, big one in this book is all about how the company went from having memory, like storage, to actually processing power. As computers were kind of changing in the way that they were doing things, they had to be prepared to give something up completely, let it go, and go somewhere else. And so think about all the discussions that you would have to do in your business. Let's say if you were cleaning windows and eaves troughs, and you were like, I make money on windows and I don't on eaves troughs. So you got to tell everyone I'm not doing that anymore. I'm only washing windows. You got to be able to get rid of something and focus on the things that are making money for you. Now, in this book, because there's so many different computer brands that are fighting, he always mentions that you have to outrun competition. Now, if any of you guys who follow me, you know I'm always saying we have to outrun inflation. And in the past couple of years, we know how inflation has gone bananas. And most of the advanced countries of the world are looking at 5 to 10% inflation over the next 5 years, no matter what the governments do. So now we got two things to outrun. We need to out-earn inflation, and we have to outrun our competition. So we have to keep on adapting. Keep on adapting. And in his final chapter of the book, Only the Paranoid Survive, he also is talking about the chaos that ensues everywhere, but we need to adapt. And he mentions two words that I kind of like: adaptive behavior. It's the behavior of being willing to adapt, which is going to continually see us through. The whole life goal for us is, I think everyone's always talking about retirement, always talking about the good times that are going to come. There will be a day when it calms down. But like I mentioned in the beginning, I try to read a book a week. If you read a book a week and you guarantee that for the rest of your entire life will just be about sucking in knowledge and improving yourself, which is incredible. But that in itself is adaptive, and understanding that we can't just build a business today that'll last 1,000 years. We're going to have to continue to change the way we do business as technology change, and our clients might need different things and different services. You know, in real estate in the old days, they used to have a big book. Do you guys remember that? I'm dating myself. And they'd come there and they'd open the book and they'd have little cards in it with a picture. Nowadays, we have ads on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. We have online systems, automatic mailers. If you don't adapt to this stuff, you're going to be left behind. So if we can just be sure and be resolute for ourselves that we'll continue learning and continue to adapt and continue to have discussions and challenge our own assumptions ourselves and with the people that we talk to, I think that we can be better people, better family members, better companies, maybe even a better world. Maybe I'm just dreaming too much. Anyway, guys, if you like this type of stuff, I'd love to hear it. This is the book right here. I'll put a link down below if you're interested in reading it. You can get the audiobook. The audiobook is about 5 hours. This book is 185 pages or so. If you look at the book, there isn't too many graphs in there. There's a couple, but not many. So it is a book that audiobook could work on. But if you like this stuff, I hope that you get some benefit from it. If you get any benefit whatsoever, I'd really appreciate it if you can smash that like button and hit that subscribe button. We got a lot more stuff coming for you this year. 2023 is going to be huge for everybody. Now, it's going to be huge for our businesses, yes, but the amount of opportunity that's going to present to you in the next 2 years will dictate the next 20 years of your life. Anyway, you guys, I love you. Thanks for spending some time with me today. I wish you the very best. And if you know one buddy that this could help, please consider sending it over his way. I'm here for you. I'll talk to you soon. Thanks so much for sticking around. If you like that video, you might like this one and maybe something like that.